to our distinguished special guests, which include everyone who is attending today's discussion. The topic I was asked to speak on was the power of inquiry. And there was a clause that I should not speak very long. Hare Krishna. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, our beloved Guru Maharaj, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he writes that everyone spends their lives within a series of questions and answers. When the bird rises in the morning, begins asking questions and searching for answers. When it comes back to the nest at night, it is still asking questions and trying to find answers. In human existence, the businessmen, women, politicians, lawyers, artists, farmers, life is a series of questions and answers. How to resolve our problems. How to find happiness. How to avoid suffering. Of course, in today's age, one of the greatest series of questions and answers is how to make money, how to make friends, how to gain power, prestige. All the television shows, all the cinemas, all the newspapers, magazines, they're all about these questions and answers. Now, the Vedic scriptures explain that atato brahma jigyasa. When we ask the relevant questions which relate to our true identity, then human life qualitatively begins. Atato brahma jigyasa. Now that you are a human being, inquire into who you are. The questions of eating, sleeping, mating, defending, and all of their various subdivisions is the basic trend of human intelligence in today's world. But these are unimportant questions. Who am I? Why am I suffering? Where am I coming from? Where am I going? Who is God? What is the nature of this universe? And what is my relationship with God in this universe? When a human being comes to the elevated platform of making sincere inquiring on these subjects, then the human life has real spiritual value. Kamasya nendriya pritir labo jivete yavasha. Jivasya tattva jigyasya naroto yascheha karmabi. Life's desires should not simply be aimed toward the temporary pleasures of the senses and their objects, because such pleasures are available for the lower species. One should live, as far as possible, a healthy life to supply the body and the mind the needs that it requires, and utilize one's valuable human energy to inquire into the absolute truth. Then only can be on the path of real happiness. And the next verse of Bhagavatam describes what that absolute truth is. Vadanti tat vidas tattvam yajnanam advayam. Brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. That this non-dual substance called the absolute truth has three features. Brahman, the impersonal, all-pervading aspect of God. Paramatma, the Lord who is seated within the heart of every living being as the constant witness. And Bhagavan, the supreme personality of Godhead, the supreme enjoyer who performs unlimited pastimes in the spiritual world and comes to this world again and again to invite us into our original natural relationship with Him. The 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells, Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya, upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninastvata darshana. If you want to know the truth, you must approach Guru. Inquire submissively with an enthusiasm to render service. Because the self-realized souls, they can impart knowledge because they have seen the truth. And we find throughout history, this has been the system. Socrates, in ancient Greece, he predominantly taught his disciples through questions and answers. And in our Vedic scriptures, as did Jesus Christ, questions and answers. In our Vedic scriptures, we find the spirit and the content of the questions and answers between sincere people. And it is a continuous theme to emphasize the importance of this spirit for all sincere beings, for all times. We have Bhagavad Gita. In the 1st chapter, we read about Arjuna's dilemma. He was on a battlefield. On that battlefield, there were two sides, the Kurus and the Pandavas. He was ready to fight, enthusiastic to fight. He was waiting for that war for 12 years. But then when he saw with his eyes who the participants were, he was distraught. Friends, relatives, people he loved and adored on both sides. It was too much for him. He tried to resolve the answer within his own mind, but ultimately it was beyond himself. And then he turned to Krishna. Karpanya doso pahatasva bhava. He did not inquire from Krishna as a curious student. He inquired in a sense of dire urgency. Tell me, what is my duty? I do not know what is to be done or what is not to be done. Similarly, Parikshit Maharaj, as Arjuna's desperate, urgent question was the setting of Bhagavad Gita, Maharaj Parikshit was cursed to die in 7 days. His questions were not out of curiosity. His questions were with a real, sincere urgency to understand. Who am I? Where am I coming from? What is the duty of a man about to die? What is the essence of all religion? I don't have time to go through all the technicalities of various religions. What is the essence? That is what I'm looking for. Please instruct me. And he did not just ask anyone. Arjuna asked Krishna. Parikshit Maharaj asked Shukadev Goswami, who happened to be the son and disciple of Vedavyas, a fully learned person in Parampara, who lived by the truth. So this is very important. If we really want to digest food, we have to have hunger. Yes? If you have no hunger, you have very weak digestion. Hunger is a very important part of life because it gives power to digest. And that holds true with spiritual knowledge. When we feel an urgency, a need, a hunger to solve the real problems of life, and we inquire from people who actually are in a proper disciplic line, who reveal the Word of God, then our human life really begins. Sanatana Goswami was a great scholar, a multimillionaire, a powerful politician. He was Prime Minister of Bengal. But he renounced everything for the sake of self-realization. And it was in Varanasi that he approached Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he fell at Lord Chaitanya's feet. Here is a man with such power, Saraswat Brahmin of the highest caste, thoroughly learned in the Vedic scriptures, the Persian and Arabic scriptures. He was top of the line in every sense of academic, social, political considerations. But when he approached Lord Chaitanya, he fell at Lord Chaitanya's feet and cried. And with folded palms, he begged, "Please answer my questions. Who am I? Why am I suffering? Why do I have to die? Where am I coming from? Where am I going? Who is God? What is my relationship with God? I do not know the answer to any of these questions. And yet people call me a learned scholar. And I am so shameless that I believe them." Please help me. He was sincere. Lord Chaitanya cried. He said, Sanatana Goswami, your humility is breaking my heart. You know the answers to all these questions. But just to teach the world by your example, you are asking these questions to me. And then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he began a very, very long dissertation explaining in great detail the nature of God, the living entity, the universe, karma, and the spiritual world. But his first sentence in answering included everything he was about to speak. Jivera Swarupoi Krishnera Nityadas. That every living entity is eternally the servant of Krishna. When we understand our relationship with Krishna, our relationship with our bodies, our relationship with the universe and every other living entity around us, that is called Sambandha Gyan. And when we act according to that relationship, in a spirit of servitude toward God and every living being, that is called Abhideya Gyan. And when we realize, through purification of devotional service to the Lord, the ultimate fulfillment of life, eternal ecstatic love of God, that is called Prayojana Gyan. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he declared that these are the only three subjects in any scriptures in the world, essentially. What is our relationship with God and the universe around us and all living beings? How do we act according to that relationship? And what is our constitutional fulfillment? The fulfillment of pure love. Most all of you this evening are college students. You have many exams where there's questions and you have to give answers. In preparing for your exams, you're asking the questions and trying to get the answers. The scriptures tell us that there is a final exam. That final exam is called death. It's not a horrible thing unless we fail it. Death is neither good or bad. If we fail the exam of death, it's a miserable situation. But if we pass that exam, it's the most glorious opportunity in all of creation to be reunited eternally with the all-beautiful, all-merciful, all-loving Lord. So these are the most important questions. Dharmashvanushtata pungshang vishwakshena katashyat notpadiyed yatiratim shrame evahi kevalam. This human life is so precious. And whatever occupation we may perform within this human life, its perfection is when we gain a taste for hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. Otherwise, whatever we've done at the time of death, it's a waste of time. We can't take anything with us except whatever spiritual progress we have made. You are all young and intelligent and vibrant and have the energy to perform such wonderful work for the benefit of the whole world. But what is most critical at this time for your spiritual future is what questions you ask. how you ask those questions and the answers you receive. Yes, we all have to deal with the superficial questions that come upon us in our daily lives, in our working place, in our families, just dealing with this body. But we must put preeminence in the crucial questions that have eternally been glorified throughout the ages. The question of how to realize our true self and understand our relationship with God. The only answer that can actually remove suffering from the human heart. And I will end this short talk with a beautiful verse spoken by Shonak Rishi in Naimisharanya. Actually, it was spoken by Sutta Goswami in response to the questions of Shonak Rishi. Munaya saduprishtoham bhavadbir lokamangalam yatkrita krishna samprashno yenatma suprasidati. The sages of Naimisharanya, they were performing a yajna for the auspicious welfare of all humanity. But through all their yajna for so long, nothing was happening. They were just burning wood and getting black in the face. Then they inquired from Sutta Goswami, what is the goal of life? What did you hear on the bank of the Ganges from Shukadev Goswami in relationship to Krishna and his most benevolent avatars who come to this world? Please tell us this. And Sutta Goswami said, your questions are glorious because the subject matter of these questions is Krishna, the Supreme Lord. And therefore the answers to these questions are for the greatest benefit and welfare of all living beings. Srila Prabhupada, our beloved Guru Maharaj, he was speaking Bhagavad Dharma to intelligent people from all over the world. He did not want blind followers. He wanted independent thinking people who by their own free will were convinced of the substance of the scriptures through sincere and submissive inquiry. Srila Prabhupada welcomed questions, especially today's youth with scientific modern education. One or two generations back here in India, you just did what your parents told you to do. But not anymore. Not with Western educational system. Last summer, I was at the Venkateshwar Temple in Pittsburgh. And I'm going to end with this, I might end with this last story. And I was speaking to the president of the temple. He was giving me a tour. And he brought me to an auditorium. And he told me how once a year they have a youth festival. And I was curious. I said, most of your children were born and raised in America, although all of you are from Andhra Pradesh in South India. I would like to know how your children, born and raised in Pennsylvania, America, how are they adopting to your religion. Because their religion is very much based on rituals. They have philosophy, but a lot of pujas and a lot of yagyas and a lot of samskaras and like that. Would you like to know the answer? He said, none of our children will have anything to do with the rituals or the yagyas or the samskaras or anything like that. They just think it's a waste of time. However, they ask us, the parents, why we do it. And I consider that they're more exalted than us, because we do it all and we don't even know why we do it. Our whole lives, and this man who was talking to me was in his late 50s. He's a professor at the University of Pittsburgh with a PhD. He said, my whole life, since I'm a child, I've been performing these pujas every day for hours because my parents told me to. But I never asked them why we're doing it. And all the adults in this temple, none of us have ever asked why we're doing it. We just do it because we're supposed to do it, because the family does it. It's our tradition to do it. But our children are asking, why do you do it? So he said, I think that my children are more advanced than us because they're asking a good question. Now, Srila Prabhupada wanted us to ask questions. He did not want us to be blind followers. Religion without philosophy is either fanaticism or sentimentalism. And philosophy without religion is simply mental speculation. Philosophy means to inquire, to understand. And religion means to practice with faith. So the marriage between philosophy and religion makes our spiritual foundation very strong, and it can grow in the right direction. So yes, you have learned an education through Western systems which teaches you how to doubt, which teaches you how to question. And the Vedic literatures have the most perfect and precise answers to those questions. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami said, if you have questions, if you have philosophical or scientific inquiries, just apply them to the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and you will find something extraordinary that will transform your life. Go Premanandi! Thank you very much. Is there any questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is as we know in spiritual life, whatever studies we do in college and all, they are not of much importance. Even though we do for the sake of doing and for land, for some wealth and all, at times we become so complacent that they are not very important. So we'll end up going from both sides, not we are doing even spiritual progress and not even that. So please instruct.
That is a very distinguished way of saying that you're lazy. We should not be lazy. A lazy person makes no progress in any field. But let us take Arjuna as an example. He was a soldier. He studied at a college, the Academy of Dronacharya. And Dronacharya was teaching him how to perform his profession, how to shoot arrows, how to organize military phalanxes, how to fight with swords. So many subjects. For several years they studied. And he learned well. In fact, whatever Dronacharya taught Arjuna, he listened so carefully that he perfected that subject par excellence by the next morning. He did his homework. When others were sleeping, he was up all night just studying, practicing, and he had it perfect by the next morning. That's what kind of student he was. But what made him such a great personality? Because Duryodhana learned the same subjects. He also learned how to fight with swords and clubs and arrows and bows and organize military phalanxes and the strategy of using spies to get confidential information from the enemies. He learned it all. The difference is Arjuna used it all for Krishna. Duryodhana used it for his own false ego, for his own temporary greed. Yes? So this is a great example. If you're in college, whatever you're studying, study well, with the intention to use it for Krishna throughout your life. That spiritualizes it. And in order to do that honestly, we should have a strong spiritual foundation. We should balance our education with our spiritual life so that we integrate the two. If you're regularly reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and the Holy Scriptures, if you're regularly chanting the God's names, if you're living a high moral life of integrity, if you're associating with people who are inspiring your heart with spiritual enthusiasm, and then you study, whether it's engineering or law or business, whatever you're studying, you're doing it in spiritual consciousness. You're doing it as an offering to Krishna. You're doing it with the intent to utilize for the welfare of humanity and Krishna's service. Then it becomes Sanatana Dharma. So that is important. We should not be lazy in our domestic responsibilities, and we should not be lazy in our spiritual pursuits. We should be dynamic. We should be enthusiastic. So many of our devotees who are excellent in their spiritual character and spiritual practice have been the #1 students in their class in some of the most respected colleges in Bombay and Pune. Why? Because they have a greater motivation. They're studying to use their work for Krishna, like Arjuna did. Others are studying because they have greed. Or whatever. Some sense of material security. There's no higher, more powerful, motivating factor than love of God. And if it's used properly, it could be of the greatest benefit to ourselves and to the whole world. So do not be lazy. Do not look for excuses. If you're going to be a student for Krishna. And if you're going to be a student for Krishna, you should be the best student possible, because it's for Krishna. Whatever we do for Krishna, we should do wholeheartedly. Does that answer your question? I know you're not lazy, but I said it just in case. In case anyone has any lazy propensities.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, I want to ask how to control and purify our senses.
That is a very important question. It's the essence of life. That question and that answer is the path of perfection. Krishna tells, actually it is described, Sarvopadiva nirmuktam tatparatena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktiruchyate. That by engaging our senses and our mind, which is the sixth sense, in the service of the Lord, we become purified of all illusory designations. Om apavitra pavitro va sarvavastam gatopi va yasmaret pundarikaksham sabhayabhyantara suchi. Whether we're purified or unpurified, one who remembers the beautiful lotus-eyed, supreme personality of Godhead becomes purified from within and without. We become what we associate with. If we associate with impure people, impure activities, impure thoughts, we become polluted. If we associate with people who are pure, with activities that are pure, with thoughts that are pure, then we become purified. Srila Prabhupada gave example, if you put an iron rod in fire, it becomes red and hot like fire. And if you say it's still an iron rod, touch it, and you'll be burnt the same way as if you touched fire directly. That is the power of association. Put that same iron rod in ice and it will become cold as ice. So our purification or our degradation is based on what our mind and senses associate with. Krishna's name is Pavitra. He is supremely pure. By remembering Krishna, we become purified. By serving Krishna with our senses become purified. And what is the easiest way to remember Krishna? Sevonmukhi jivado. Simply by our tongue, we can invoke the presence of Krishna by chanting his name and discussing his glories. Therefore, this Harinam Sankirtan is the most recommended process in this age of Kali. Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam, kalo nasteva, nasteva, nasteva gatir anyatha. In this age of Kali, the chanting of the holy names is the only practical means for the common people to attain the supreme perfection of pure heart. Nam nama kari bahu nija sarva shaktish. All the potencies, opulences, the Lord himself is personally present in the holy name. And the Lord is all pure. So simply with our tongue, in any situation, and there are no hard and fast rules, you can chant anywhere. Absorb your mind in Krishna and become purified. What a benediction. We often tell the story of one man who was constantly chanting the holy names. And one day he was going to the bathroom. This was in Jagannath Puri. And he had a lota in one hand. And he was chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And with his other hand, he was trying to somehow or other stop his tongue. Krishna, Krishna, Ram, Ram, Hare, Hare, Krishna, Krishna. Trying to hold his tongue. And it really looked strange. So one little 5-year-old boy approached him and said, "What are you doing?" He said, I have such a taste for chanting Krishna's name, I can't stop chanting. But at the same time, I'm going to respond to nature's calls. I should not chant Krishna's name when I'm doing an activity like that, so I'm trying to control it, but I can't. And the little boy said, there are no hard and fast rules for chanting. You can't do puja to your deity when you're passing stool. Yes? You're not supposed to bring the Holy Scriptures into that room either. But the chanting of the holy name, you can do it anywhere and everywhere and become purified. That is the power of the name. And the name is none different than Krishna. So this is the simple mercy of the Lord in this age of Kali. By serving Krishna, by seeing the deity of Krishna, by tasting the prasad of Krishna, by bowing down to Krishna, by associating with the devotees of Krishna, by touching the devotees of Krishna, by hearing the kirtan of Krishna, by smelling the flowers and incense offered to Krishna, by eating the prasad of Krishna. All these things purify us because they connect us to Krishna. But of all things, at any time, in any situation, we could be purified by the presence of the Lord by taking shelter of His holy names. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And if we are students and we're studying, we may be studying biological engineering or chemical engineering or architectural engineering or so many other, electrical engineering or medicine. So how are we going to get purified thinking about all those things? If our intent is to offer our service as students for the pleasure of the Lord, and we live in harmony with the will of the Lord in our studies, and we have a nice spiritual foundation to our life, then we will be purified even in our studies because we're doing it for Krishna. We're conscious of Krishna. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
You're welcome very much.
Maharaj, my question is, sometimes we meet with argumentative people some people ask us questions in an argumentative mood, and if we speak, they are going to mock us. We are pretty sure about that. And if we don't speak, we'll be defeated by keeping quiet in front of others. So how do we handle such situations?
With intelligence. That is important. We should not be concerned with being mocked. We should be concerned with doing the right thing. Because in this age of Kali Yuga, if you do the right thing, you will definitely be mocked. Yes? I have spoken to socialites in Bombay, and they say if they're not drinking alcohol, people make fun of them. Nobody's going to make fun of you if you're drinking cocktails at a cocktail party. But if you don't, what are you, some kind of saint? I know who you really are. What, you think you're better than us, that you're not drinking? So you'll be mocked. In the West, to not have boyfriends and girlfriends when you're a teenager, you'll be mocked. Some kind of antisocial misfit. Yes? So the real question is, samsiddhir haritoshanam, are we pleasing Krishna? We want to live by truth, whatever people say. So if people challenge us with arguments, we should simply be honest. If we really want to help those people and others, we should sincerely study Prabhupada's books so that we have the answers. Yes? I have seen simple people with hardly any education who just, read Bhagavad Gita as it is, or read Ishopanishad, and they can answer the questions of PhD professors and defeat them. Yes? So let us arm ourselves with knowledge so that we have answers. Yes? Not because we don't want to be mocked, but because we want to do service. We want to enlighten people. The more we have, the more we can give. So according to our capacity, let us try to understand what is the truth. Our beloved Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, he would stay up most of the night translating and writing purports to the Vedic literatures. And I remember in one class in New York City where he was telling the devotees that my primary reason for writing these books is for all of you. So that you not only understand with conviction, so that you can practice with a clean heart, but so that you can also convince others. So if somebody is challenging you, simply for the sake of challenging, with absolutely no concern for the answers, then you can just politely explain that spiritual knowledge can only be exchanged when there is a dialogue. Questions have to be with a desire to learn. And you could defeat them on that point. Are you asking me to learn, or are you asking me just to show how much you know? If you want to tell me how much you know, just tell me. But if you're going to ask a question, a real question is with a desire to learn. If you have a desire to learn, ask your question and hear the answer. And then explain according to your realization. And that is perfect. Krishna will be pleased.